Hey Toby, what do you want to do today?
Exactly the same as every day, Bibi. We will conquer the world.
But we already did that yesterday, didn't we?
Really? Then, well, what about talking about creativity? Cars can't fly? We show you that with creativity, everything is possible and that this wonderful ability is in every single one of us.
Listen now and learn more about your personal creative ability and its importance for you, for organizations, and for society.
Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your lederhosen. Jahnke Höflinger.
Lederhosen are fastened. Now, hope for you as well. Welcome to a new episode of Talking Creativity. Today, we're happy to have another great guest. I'm excited to introduce Isa, an international and interdisciplinary scholar whose career is nothing short of an adventure. You will definitely hear that now. As the first in her family to attend university, she earned her master's degree in social sciences with a focus on technology from Wuppertal University in 1997. I was 2 years old at that time, by the way. She started her career as a consultant before returning to academia to earn her PhD in 2005 from Dortmund University. Then after her PhD, she worked as a postdoctoral fellow at Ruhr University of Bochum and as an assistant professor at TU Dortmund. Wow, that's already a lot, but wait for it, there is even more to come. Then Isa lived 10 years abroad. In 2011, she moved to Sweden and became a professor where she was the scientific leader of a research group. In 2015, she moved to the USA, where she also was a professor and directed the Information Experience Lab. At this time, she really deepened her research and teaching as a professor of learning design and technologies. Then after 10 years abroad, Isa returned back to lovely Germany in 2021 as a professor at the University of Münster. A lot of cities we have here, but her journey also didn't end there. Because in 2022, she accepted an exciting challenge to help shape the newly founded University of Technology in Nürnberg. Now, as the founding vice president for digital learning and professor of information science and learning technologies, she has a unique opportunity to build a new university from the ground up. That sounds extremely exciting, and I don't know what you think, but I think this is a really remarkable journey from Isa. And during the whole time, she even released around 160 publications and didn't hesitate to share her knowledge in numerous keynote speeches. Sometimes she says she looks back and says, what a life and research adventure. It was certainly never boring, as you could all hear. Now, when she's looking ahead, she is super excited to shape and influence the next 10 years. And we are excited to shape the next hour together with her. So let's welcome together dear Isa Jahnke. Happy to have you here in our podcast today.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh, that's me. Thank you so much for having me.
I have a question in my mind, actually. After listening to what Bibi said, do you have this typical scratch map, like this thing, like a map with all the countries and cities, and then you can scratch free basically this place where you've been? And then you kind of like look for all the places. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I absolutely know what you mean. But no, I don't have that. Not at all. I think it was a life coincidence that I ended up in Umeå, Sweden, as well as in Missouri. It was not planned at all.
Okay.
But how did it happen then?
Yeah, good question. But I think you started with the idea that I'm interdisciplinary scholar. And in Germany at the time, I did my PhD and was assistant professor. There was no professorship for me in Germany because Germany is really disciplinary. And speaking about creativity, this is a kind of silos you have here in Germany.
One of the reasons why I did not go for a professorship, because creativity will never lead you to being a professor in Germany.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's really different in the other countries. So it was plan A to stay in Germany, but I needed to broaden my mind. And Sweden and Scandinavian countries, they offer you these kind of interdisciplinary professorships. So media, technology, education, everything was there. So it was a job announcement in Sweden where I said, oh my gosh, they know me. They didn't.
Yeah.
But
That's made for you.
Yeah. And so I ended up there. But then it was cold. It's really up north. It's almost in the Arctic Circle.
Ooh.
It's really nice, but it's really cold in the winter.
Okay.
So I had already some international networks, and United States asked me if I want to join them in Missouri. And so perfect. I applied. And
It's warmer there.
Yeah, it's warmer there. And even more creative. Maybe not. Scandinavia and the United States are both really creative also in research. And they do not have these disciplinary
segregated domains, basically.
Departments, exactly.
Or departments.
They are much more, there is something new. We have to tangle it with interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary creative scholars. So they have more interdisciplinary schools.
Mm-hmm. I like that. We typically have the first initial question that is...
I just thought before we jump into that question, I'm just curious to know, maybe take a step back first, and can you maybe share a bit more about your current position or your current area? Because I said you're like the founding vice president for digital learning and professor of information science and learning technologies. And actually, I have no idea what exactly stands behind that.
What do you do on a typical Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.?
Yeah, so can you set the scene before we somehow jump into the topic? So what exactly do you do then? What is your area?
I love sharing what I do right now at the University of Technology Nürnberg, in short UTN. So there is no day is like the other day, because what we do is we build a university from scratch. And a good kind of image or metaphor you can think about is two people, the president and the chancellor, the chancellors in a way. They moved to that rented building almost 3 years ago, and there was nothing. No staff, no infrastructure, no processes, no professors, nobody was there. My ID number was 24, so I was the 24th person. And what I do is I build everything around teaching and learning. Study programs, but also how to build a graduate school where then everything around dissertation processes. We have new exciting ideas. Everything what I do is creative, obviously, because we create new processes, new structures. And there's a lot of things going on right now. So we have to build new buildings, active learning classrooms, for example. We do not have lecture halls. We want to build more creativity into our study programs, means we have a different teaching approach. So right now we are talking with our department chairs about new study programs, and everything what I do. It's no typical Wednesday morning. What is maybe typical is I do have sure fix with my team. Right now I started alone, more or less. Now I have 24 people in my team. I don't know exactly. And the university has 150 people right now after 3 years. But again, think about everything what you see at a traditional university, everything we have to rebuild from scratch. You have a white canvas in front of you, and that is what we do.
Yeah, and maybe also rethink what is already there.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, and not just copy-paste
Yes.
what is already out there, but
Yes.
rethink
Yes.
structures or processes or whatever that are currently out there.
Absolutely, how to do it better in terms of how can we improve teaching and learning, or also research, but research is not my part, it's the other vice president's part. But my responsibility is to rethink how we can use creative things from Sweden, the United States, but also other countries, and also really rethinking, exactly as you said, using different things, but also going beyond that, what we know, and trying to do something else. It's a kind of a living lab where we have ideas, we put it into practice, we get data to understand if we are good to go or if we have to adjust it or to change the processes or structures we build.
I love that. But do you teach at the moment then also?
We only have one study program. We only have 10 students. So again, we had no students. Only 2 people started 3 years ago. We started with our first study program 1 year ago. And now we get 30 or 40 students more. And usually I should teach, but there is nothing where I can teach right now. And we needed to hire professors for our artificial intelligence and robotics study program. So hopefully in the future, I can teach in my professorship is about learning technologies, how we use new technologies to improve learning, to improve teaching. So yes, absolutely, I would love to teach in the near future, hopefully.
Super interesting. Should we jump now into the
nice
question?
segue to our topic, actually. So first and foremost, the most important question of this podcast is, of course, Isa, what is creativity to you, actually? And what role does it potentially play in what you just described?
This is so funny when I hear that question, because I started with creativity research in 2009, and we asked exactly the same question to all our participants, mostly professors, because we wanted to understand how we can improve the support of creativity in higher education. So now you ask me the same question back, and what is creativity for me is, it's actually when, it's not easy to answer, but for me it's something when somebody creates something novel. And in the literature, another research group would say, and it has value to someone. And here is a difficult thing, because to whom has it value? It can be just me. It has just value for me when I create a new song or create a new painting. Mm-hmm. That's maybe creative already for me, but maybe not for you, because it's maybe boring, or it's even not value for the society. So the question is, something new and meaningful for me does not necessarily mean it also has value for somebody else. Mm. But that's the reason why we can be all creative.
Mm-hmm. And what is it, like, how would you describe it for yourself? What is creativity to you? Like in a...
You mean beyond that definition, what it is?
Yeah. Like, what role does it play in your life?
It is like, it starts with just being in that mood to be in the shower singing, but also having new ideas about, for example, in my job, having new ideas how I can improve or how can I design courses better for my students. And in my private life, it is about just having fun, I think. And then based on that situation, new ideas come to your mind. So it's not just one thing what creativity is for me. It's just that feeling, I think.
Yeah. And you talked about that you're thinking of how to integrate creativity, or let's say how to make students in your university more creative, or enable that even more than it's potentially done in other universities across Germany or beyond. Are there any things in that discussion that you can now share, or any findings that you think, no, that's something we do definitely different because it has a bigger influence on creativity if we do it in a different way? Anything that you have in mind there?
I have a lot in mind. We don't do it yet at UTM because we are so young, and we have to build basic things first. But the basic idea in higher education or at UTN is bringing students into that new role, that they are not just consumers, not just listener of information, not just listening what the professors say. So that's the reason why we go away from the traditional lecture, sitting there 90 minutes and listening what the professors have or they have to say, but rather understanding that they need to turn into active agents to really create and develop new knowledge. And that is one basic for creativity. When you are part of the learning process, and where you, for example, are just not listeners, but doing projects together in, for example, building robots or building artificial intelligence tools. When you build that, then you know what you don't know, where you have gaps. And that brings that environment, that brings students creativity. So project-based learning is one part of our process at UTN. We call it active learning. That's a traditional term in research. But for our audience, maybe it's easier to understand project-based learning, where really students work in smaller teams, 3-5 people together, and do something together based on what they did here, or based on what they did read, or maybe a video or podcast they listen to, and then they do the project. And while they are doing the project, they can be creative. They build something new and novel. And that can mean maybe even for the teachers it's novel, or even later it's super novel and they build a new company based on that. And so how can we support creativity in higher ed? There are a lot of different models out there, what we try to do, what we haven't done yet, but you can foster or you can design courses where creativity or the environment to be more creative is part of that. So explicitly, we do not support creativity right now because we are too young, but implicitly, the project-based learning approach gives students more opportunity to be more creative.
Yeah. If you haven't done so far, I would recommend to talk to David Cropley. I don't know if you...
I read all his books and in engineering education. And of course, in 2009, it was one of the most important people in creativity.
Yeah, we actually collaborate really closely with him. He just visited Germany kind of 3 weeks ago or something. And I think what struck me was that he's teaching creativity in the Australian military education system, something. That was really crazy. And he said that is the case. I mean, in a military setup, they decide, that's how he explained that to me. They decide, okay, we're going to attack the enemy here and there. I don't know, some kind of a decision like that. But how we do that is up to creativity. And it's the toughest playground for creativity because he said, well, if that is going wrong, we're dead or people are dying. So they kind of really invest a lot in the understanding of what is creativity and how can we actually discover this potential solution space in how do we do that to really succeed compared to typical business environment where we're coming from. That was really interesting. And then I was also coming across those different research things that also a lot of creativity research is coming out of United States military things. And I have some kind of books there. So that was really interesting. And I think there's so much to learn there also in education, especially, I mean, I also was a student once at the German university, and now we're a little team responsible for supporting engineers and people across Siemens and beyond with this topic of creativity. And I'm honestly sometimes a little bit shocked and disappointed how tough it is and how hard it is still for a lot of people to grasp what creativity is. And I think there's so much to do. So I'm really glad to hear that you're doing something there, because typically I say, hey guys, we're starting too late at Siemens to foster creativity. We should have done that earlier, or we should do that in the future, way earlier in school, in universities and stuff, because I see that there's still so much potential regarding this topic of creating and how do you do that.
So here's my challenge for all of you. I think it's not about to define what creativity is or what actually creativity is. That's the wrong way to go. It is rather how we can foster it. And that's a big challenge because we never can, even in research, in science, there is no one clear understanding what creativity actually is, because it's super difficult. Because, as I said, what maybe creativity is for me, or what I see a creative product is for me, does not mean that it's the same, that you think it's also creative for you, or a creative product for you. So we can foster creativity. So when and that is important, that is a big difference and a super important difference. And so what we, for example, when we did our 2009, 2010 project, we asked teachers, how can you see when your students are creative? So we wanted to understand what is creativity from the teacher's perspective, when they see students' creativity. And we got a lot of data. It's published 2015. I do not want to go into the details, but we found 6 aspects of creativity, how we can support creativity in higher education. That is, for example, with what we call self-reflective learning. Create a course design or environment where students start to self-reflect what they have learned, to bring them more, to help them to show that they were creative or not. Second, independent or autonomous learning. It's a label for helping them to be more autonomous in their learning, and help, for example, giving them projects. And in projects, when they do a project together, they have to make decisions. Because when they're just listener in a lecture, they do not do any decisions. So giving them, and third is a curiosity or motivation, creating a course or a seminar where students are really motivated to do the learning. And fourth is they produce something together. It's obviously when you produce something, you see what the creative product in a way, or it's creative or not. Number 5 is multi-perspective. So designing courses for the students where they learn not to just assign one perspective, but understanding that to the same topic, there are maybe multiple perspectives or views, maybe even contradictory definitions, but that gives you the tool that you can be more creative when you know the different perspectives. Number 6 is, of course, creating totally new ideas, novel ideas. What, for example, Kaufmann and Begetto say the big C, the Nobel Prize Award, or the great artist who is in the history box. And so these different levels of creativity, the little C, the mini C, the professional creativity, or the big C, we have to understand that we can foster all of them, but it's hard to achieve the big C if you do not foster students to have that environment to be more creative.
And you're coming from different universities from Sweden and United States. Do you also see there in culture and those kind of things differences to Germany and German university system? I mean, you're German, born German, I would say, right? So is there anything you observed what was interesting for you and that you also try to now bring to this new university?
Absolutely. Sweden, for example, I think also Denmark and Norway, the Scandinavian countries, they are much more, right from the start, right from kindergarten on, they are more collaborative. So it's a collaborative culture. When you go, for example, to the universities there, it's not about sitting alone and learning, but doing it together. Even outside the lectures, when you have time between the lectures and so on. So that's, of course, when you have that exchange or the discourse or the discussions with others, you learn much more. So that is that idea of bringing people together, going beyond your own horizon, what Vygotsky says, the zone of proximal development. You need others to be better, to learn language, for example, but also to be more creative even. And that is inherently part of the Scandinavian culture and society. And Germany is different. And another thing is what I learned in the United States, but also in Sweden. They are much more open to try new things, technology.
Why is that? What do you think? I mean, what did you
I
observe?
don't know. It comes maybe from the German culture to be more critical and let the others...
Risk averse?
Yeah, maybe.
They're more fierce, maybe also.
Yeah, we are more critical thinkers, and we let the other do first before we adopt technology. Sweden is Denmark even smaller. They have just 4 million citizens, and these smaller countries, they live because they are innovative. A lot of innovative technologies comes from these countries. And so they find something new. For example, Google Glass, in I don't know how many years ago, you could buy it in New York City only. And people from Sweden did fly to New York City to really buy it and to be part of that competition. And so they see something new, they want to have it, they try it. And what works, they keep. And what doesn't work, they just pull it away. And so it's just trying it, exploring it. And we German maybe let the other go, right?
We watch them first.
Harmful. Watch the others first. And Sweden and the United States are rather trying it out. And then that is also a way of being more creative, because when you try it out, then you have that advantage.
But I'm still not figuring out why were we so successful regarding, I don't know, automotive industry in Germany, for example. You also need creativity to come up with those kind of technologies and stuff, because I always have this saying or this little story in mind of a guy. He founded this innovation hub for Volkswagen in Silicon Valley, which they closed down, I guess, right now already. And we had a 2-hour session, and he had so many nice, interesting stories for us. And he said one thing. He said, if an old person after a successful life has roughly, let's say, $1 million on the bank account in United States, that person would rather rent out his 2 garages basically and give 2 startups each $500K to kind of do something. And that person is interested in creating new value with that, but high risk. In Germany, someone who has $1 million in the bank account would rather invest and buy a house or flats to rent out to make even more money with a low risk approach, basically. And that was really interesting. And that's potentially also kind of coming back to how our cultures are different. And I think now coming back to your university in Nürnberg, which is newly founded, I think it's also this, in your DNA, that's at least what I see from the outside perspective, it should be a very international university, right? So is that also part of, hey, let's bring different cultures together as part of creativity, fostering creativity, but also what I think could be a really big challenge in Nuremberg, which is not Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, bring the internationals to Nuremberg. I don't know. That's something I'm really curious about. Where are you standing at right now? What are the challenges? Why do you want to have it as an international one? It's potentially also something that, I don't know, are people hesitant to go there because it's small? I mean, yeah, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. Thank you so much. I would like to start first with your example. Why are people in the United States, why they would use the $1 million differently than in Germany? I think that is exactly the point. Creativity also needs an environment. Mm-hmm. And of course, there is much more to that part in the United States because they have, for example, everything is about business. And once you live there, it's easier to put your money into a new business because they have much less regulation than we have in Germany. On the other side, that also is harmful for the entire society. So you have to understand that when you ask people in United States and in Germany, what do you think? Who is responsible for your own success? Then in the United States, 70% say it's me as an individual person. It's not the system who has to be
That's a good point.
Has to be taken care of me. Yeah. And in Germany, it's the other way around. They say 70% think the system is there for them to help them to be happy and successful. So there's a lot of more to that example. But maybe not to go into detail, but that would be maybe another podcast. But in the automotive industry in Germany, why it was so successful, I have no idea in the details. But one thing is probably they had the environment, that is the ecology, so to speak, the ecosystem that they had here or have here. Everything works. And there's a lot of other things why the engineers here in Germany were so creative and not in other places. But that is maybe also another time for another podcast. Coming back to your question about UTN and yes, absolutely. We want to be an international university because my understanding is when we want to tackle the grand challenges of our society today, like climate change, but also a lot of other things, mobility, then we need the most innovative, creative minds and heads in our university. So we need to be international, to bring all the different people from all the different disciplines, from the entire world here to Nuremberg, to bring them together, to work together in an interdisciplinary team, to work on these grand challenges. And when we want to do that, is of course, exactly as you said, we can't just say all people should come here and then we don't care, but we have to build structures that they feel home here, that UTN and Nuremberg becomes their home. And how do we do that? In the United States, there is a concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's a lot of knowledge about how we help international students feeling welcome here. A culture of belonging is important, and also intercultural trainings between German, European, and international people. And that is also all part of my job right now, helping students that UTN becomes their home. And not just for their international students. Think about also our German students, because we do not have lectures, at least not in our graduate program, master program. We have active learning spaces where they have to be more active. They just can't sit there listening. They have to be active.
Do the people really want that?
Exactly. Exactly.
You cannot be lazy in the lecture hall. You can just relax. Exactly. I've even seen people playing kind of computer games during
And so
lectures.
when they come here, it's a culture shock for them as well. Suddenly they can't just sit there. So suddenly they have to be
Damn it, I need to
I need to do something.
So, and for that also, it's a kind of, so everybody who comes needs to learn that we have a different culture. And so that is also a positive challenge, an advantage, bringing people together at UTN under this new roof, of international. We want to be international, interdisciplinary, and digital. We have a lot of digital courses or digital enhanced courses, not the typical everything is offline.
Yeah.
And that is also some things we bring together here in Nürnberg. So and we hope and we work for that in a few days we are like Munich, Berlin, on the same level that everyone would want to come to Nürnberg.
Would be nice. Would be nice. Would you like to study there, Bianca?
Yeah, after you told me all of that, I think the study time would be also more exciting, I'd say, because when you just consume all the content, it's okay, but it's not also that fun. I think when you have fun learning, getting active, it also stays in your brain even more intensely. So you will keep it also for even longer. You will remember it. I can only say during my master's, I always talk about my master's because we had a lot of project-based learning, as you said it. We had actually almost only projects together with companies. And this really was stuck in my head. What I learned before during my bachelor's, it was like, okay, I remember some things here and there, but getting active, really not just thinking about it, also acting, it's really more intensely for also the future.
And that is exactly why we do it, because research has shown us in the past that exactly that is the point. It stacks, it is positive, you learn more, you have deeper learning outcomes, better competencies developed, and so on. And that's exactly how you said it. It gets, you remember it later, and you develop competencies and skills you need later for your next job.
It's more painful.
It is more painful,
of course.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I also remember in my engineering course, we had also this practical course where we were designing kind of a little crane for the engine of a car, basically to get it out and in and stuff like that. So that was like really painful, a lot of work, long nights. Investment banking would call it an all-nighter and stuff like that. But of course, the learning is the biggest in that sense also. And it was collaborative. It was a team of people doing it. So that was definitely the only thing I remember out of my engineering program.
It is painful, but creativity is also painful in a way. It is not. It's the myth. The myth is that we think there is a person and he or she is suddenly creative. It's not. There are maybe years of work behind it, maybe painful evening or nights. And we know that. We talk with our students and we have that method. I know it's sometimes painful for you, but it's in the end better for learning. So we have that media communication with them, why we do it, what we do.
That's exactly what we're actually a little team doing exactly that with engineers. So we have big programs with 150 engineers doing software stuff. And now I'm curious to learn more from you, Isa, because we're also trying to actually bring them more into the problem space, more into the ambiguity. So it all feels bad, right, at first. Yeah. And it's more painful, more cognitive effort. People after working with us say, hey, I'm super tired. I slept the whole night. Your work or working with you costs me more energy than my typical day. And I'm like, yes, that's creativity. And we're still kind of on our way finding out how we, number one, convince people doing that. Because that's not the easy pathway. It's the tougher way, but promising way to kind of find better results in the end, right? And I'm really curious about what are the things to actually bring people on that journey and make it attractive. Because what I see is creativity at first is tough, hard cognitive effort. It's really hard work. In the end, at some point when you have created something new, that is really rewarding. But this moment is really a little piece of the whole journey, right? But if you learn that there's this golden nugget, this positive feeling, this reward at the end, then you do it potentially again, right? But getting people started up front, that's still a challenge.
It is. It is absolutely. So what we do at UTN, and maybe that's different to industry project or something like that, but what we do is a kind of a gamified or game-based learning approach. Mm-hmm. It means that we have online and offline sessions. In the online sessions, we have learning goals, the material needed to reach the learning goals, also learning outcomes, competency, skill-based learning outcomes. We do already have assignments, little tasks students do, because they, of course, in engineering, they need to understand the theories or prior knowledge before they can build something. You are better, of course, when you already have knowledge when you build something. I mean, you can build something without having, for example, software engineering knowledge, but then, of course, it would be never that creative. So in this online sessions, we already have a kind of assignment where they collect points. That is what I mean with gamified approach. They collect points, and all the points sum up together in the entire course. And in the end, 100% of the points would be a grade number 1 or a pass, depending on the course. So we help them to dig deeper with the assignments. And then when we have the projects, they already come with the prior knowledge. And then the only thing what we can do to foster them, to support them, is a lot of feedback. So they get feedback to every assignment. What went well? What do they have to improve? So a feedback culture, what motivates them. Hey, this is super good. Continue. We know you are going to a kind of a painful phase right now, but don't stop. So that kind of feedback in a kind of a motivated way, like a coach. I always use Jürgen Klopp as an example. That is what we need in learning to help them to go through. But still, you can talk a lot about and motivate. They learn it really in the end. The aha moment is the end when they are ready, when they went through that, or when they hiked the mountain, and then when they are there in the end, then they get the reward. Yeah. They see that aha moment for the next. It's still the same, but you can support them better with feedback culture, with motivation, to see them, to tell them, I see you that you are in a painful phase right now. But that is all what we try to do in this kind of a gamified, game-based learning approach.
Yeah, I think we need to collaborate, or at least talk there, because we are actually also trying to do this kind of similar, or at least the same direction, because we have different projects, like a few weeks, a few months, or years. And what we also see, we try to measure along the journey, basically we call it the emotions. How do you feel? And what we see is really interesting that, I mean, there are different phases. You know that, divergent, convergent. Do you open the space or do you close it, right? And always when they diverge, when they increase the ambiguity or go into the problem space, right, the emotions are down. Yeah. It always feels bad. And then if they come back to convergence or solution space, everything went up. So, and then you see those nice journeys, depending on how much you do that, how often you do that, right? It is really a nice journey for the people. And therefore, I loved what you said about reflecting about what you do and on a meta level to discuss why do you do it that way. That's actually what we do also very, very much in we do it because that's the effect. And we do we call it the transformation check-ins along the way, where we try to show them kind of a progress, what they made, and also reflect on that. And that helps to kind of increase the emotional level, basically, to feel better. Because what we see, and I don't know if that relates to your perspective, but when you don't do that, you lose them. Because the emotions are so bad, and if they are not kind of skilled and experienced in being creative, they just stop. Because it feels so bad, and people want to get rid of this negative feeling, so they stop, or they rush to a simple solution. Both ways are possible. And we're in that moment of saying, hey, creativity, and that's for me very important, what I learned the last couple of years, creativity is kind of a management of emotions of people. Is that something that also you see in your university and education?
This is really well said. One of my colleagues did create that energy or creativity energy barometer, where he wanted to understand every week you send it to the people where you work with, and you see how what is the energy level in terms of what is the creativity level. And that is really similar. And you advanced it, so to speak. And I think that is a good idea to really combine, because then you can see, because you can't see in the mind of the people what they are going through. But with that kind of instrument, you can see how they feel. You can really see it. And once you see it, you can help them. Yeah. And I think that is a great approach.
And why don't we collaborate, actually? Because it would be, I'm now super upfront, but I mean, why don't we bring students in their course, because action-based learning, right, together with engineers, potentially from Siemens, doing kind of similar stuff, and working together at least for a period of a few weeks on a project where students see real-life challenges, and workers from Siemens or engineers have some fresh perspectives from the outside, right?
I love that so much. We do have in the second and third semester for all our graduate programs, we do have two. One right now, the second starts in October. a learning and transformation project where we work with industry together. Would love to work with you and Siemens together on that. The next one starts in April next year. We already have almost summer or almost fall. So let's keep going and see what we can do to start in April with the project.
I think would love to see that coming to life, because I also see their value for both worlds, right? Industry and companies can profit from that, and also students and university have a better learning experience. And in the end, that's anyways the path where students go. And I think we need to bring both worlds closer together.
And that is part of the, again, so it's called Learning and Transformation Project. It goes in the second and third semester, where we exactly want to work with industry. And you had another idea there, bringing the not just the industry as stakeholder, what is the problem, and students solve it, but rather working with people from the different companies or organizations together. I think that is another thing. I never thought about it. It would be fantastic to frame that project in a different way. I have a coordinator who is doing it for our first it's artificial intelligence and robotics program called AIR. And I'm happy that we maybe together with her figure it out what we can do for next year. So it starts again in April. Of course, we need some things to start maybe in November, December to frame it what we can actually do together.
Yeah, would love to talk further on that, because I think there's huge potential. I mean, we have also a lot of like robotics, AI topics on our end, so perfect match.
It's a
Bianca,
match.
you're so silent today. I'm talking too much.
I love listening to both of you, having experience in this university stuff. So I'm excited to hear that. What is still stuck in my mind, Isa, you mentioned beforehand that in Germany, maybe one of the reasons why we are not that creative, maybe, or open-minded towards new technologies, for example, as in the US, let's say, is critical thinking. And I'm still wondering, I mean, we have it there, we have that critical thinking, but how can we maybe even use that critical thinking that we have there as a superpower somehow, or whatever, use it somehow to still foster the creativity? So how can we not just tell everybody you need to be open, you need to just try it out, but how can we use what we have there, what we might see as a weakness, like critical thinking, but how can we still use that for our creativity?
I think we need to differentiate more what we are talking about here. And critical thinking itself does not hinder creativity. I think, because critical thinking is one of these things we found in our studies about multi-perspectives, understanding the different views. And once you have all the different knowledge, you can be more creative even. So that does not mean that critical thinking would hinder creativity, but rather it helps to be more open to novel things. So I think what I want to say here is maybe what we do now, we mix creativity and innovation. Creativity is someone has a creative new idea, a new creative product or something like that. But how that comes into society, and if that will gain enough money for being a startup, these are two different things in a way. Of course, they belong somehow also together, but we need to be careful what we are talking about here today.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted world of different concepts. In the end, what I see is also, it depends. When I think about critical thinking and criticizing things, when I talk about something in a project where I try to create something new, whatever that might be, I see that the level of criticism that is beneficial for the project depends on the experience of the group of people and their experience in creating something. So the more they are used to be creative and criticize each other and don't take it personal, basically, the more beneficial it is for the outcome. But in a setup where the people don't know each other, low psychological safety and no experience in that sense, too much of a criticism in that sense could limit it.
And now I see. I think I really understood the question differently, because critical thinking and criticism are two different things in the research world.
Okay.
Critical thinking is rather, it's not criticism, it's rather has a negative, rather right. It's more, it has a negative connotation. Critical thinking is rather, there is something I see the pros and the cons. Maybe I would say these are two different things. We as a German society, we are sometimes more on the criticism level, and we see things too negatively. I would say, that of course hinders creativity. Absolutely. I would say we need more, exactly as you said it, we have to teach our students, and that is the next generation then of our society, to be more open to new things. And I think I just read a study that with regard to the AI technology, Germany changed towards a more open-minded society. So the older technologies like the nuclear energy, right? When you had 20 years ago some questions, then they were really negative. So German society is really negative about that one. But they are open rather AI technology. So they changed more, maybe not as much as Sweden or the United States, but it changed. So Germany, or parts of the German society, they are much more open to AI tools, for example. They have a higher technology acceptance rate. I just read that study some weeks ago.
Nice topic. We could also use that as a segue and think about it. I'm curious about your perspective on that. What is the influence of AI, Gen AI in specific, potentially on creativity? I think there's a lot of discussion around that. Is AI overtaking our creative potential, creative ability? What do you think?
I think also it depends. So as a researcher, of course, I say a lot of depends. So think about it, a designer, a graphic designer, right? Yeah. Basic parts of that graphic designer task maybe can be done in the future by AI tools. So of course they take over some of the basic tasks, but we need still graphic designers who are not, because AI is just using things what was already there and put some things together. But you need a graphic designer still to rethink if this was AI produced, if this is really something he or she wants to pitch to the company, right? And really wants to use that. So in a way, I would say it depends really. In some jobs, probably AI can take over some tasks, but not the entire jobs. The jobs profile probably will change. And I just had a nice meeting here in Nürnberg with, I think it was, I can't remember, but it was where they had a nice website where they say when you go to a specific job and you see how AI will change the job in the future, not the job will disappear, but the job will change. The basics maybe will change where AI can take over, but not the entire job will disappear. And that is super interesting. I have to rethink and give you maybe the name of that website. So
I would love to hear that. What I also came across is like what I see is on LinkedIn or whatever, that typically the software tool provider of AI tools are now overhyping and say like, hey, Gen AI already outperforms human creativity. And I'm totally against that statement. I say that is not true. And I had a lot of discussion with creativity researchers like David Cropley. He's big into this AI creativity game right now. Because what I see is that large language models are not able to diverge as much as we are able with our brain, basically. So there are a lot of limitations. But of course, as I said, it's like an augmentation of human creativity in a way. And it helps and it can help. But I also had a discussion with Hannes, our guy from a really creative marketing agency. And he said, well, I mean, just imagine if everybody's using Gen AI tools and everybody's just taking the ideas out of this, where's the differentiation then? And he said that the real creative things that they are delivering to their customers are never coming from a Gen AI tool. It's just a starting point where they have to go even beyond then. And that is a big risk I see. I don't know if you agree with that, but it is the potential that people think, reading those headlines, AI outperforms human creativity, that can like potentially bring people to that position to say, hey, I just have a problem. I type it into ChatGPT and I take the result. So it could make people lazy to think even less.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely a risk in that. But think about it. What we are now discussing, that means we would have a definitely definition of creativity. We don't have that. Yeah. So it depends always on the context. Sure. If, of course, it can be that in some context, AI can outperform human creativity. But that depends. We have to find examples where it makes sense even for us. Like I have no good idea, but and then the other things like the graphic designer example, of course, we need still humans who judge what the AI tool created for us and see if that can be really used, because there can be when you use now, for example, the Gen AI tools like ChatGPT, I don't know, there are a lot of other things out there, and you don't have knowledge about what you asked that tool, you don't know how good the quality is. And in my part, I also use it a lot. I see when it's more the not so good thing and when it's really helpful for me as a start. And maybe even maybe it has already some ideas who I never thought about it. But you need a person who has that knowledge. So we always need people to understand how good is the quality of what is the outcome of that AI result.
It's always context specific. Yes, I agree. But the challenge is that the LinkedIn headlines are never context specific. They are rather the power of AI.
That's true.
Yeah,
5 seconds video and you're a better human being, whatever.
Yeah,
but again, why is that? So why is media like doing it or other things? Of course, there's click-based and they get all the money of the clicks. The media and press needs all the attention. It's about getting all the attention, of course. That was in the United States, or maybe something what is not so good. That kind of the attention with negative highlights, or it's really also annoying, and that also makes something with the society when it's always about getting attention instead of really understanding what's going on with AI, actually.
Yeah, so dear listeners, be cautious with those big headlines and don't believe everything you read. You just heard we always will keep the human in the loop. Somehow there, it's always going to be very important.
Yeah, looking at the time, Bibi.
Yes.
We're slowly going to our end, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to...
You have typically the last couple of questions and closing remarks.
Exactly. So we do have many listeners also working in corporates. So what I want to also give them as a kind of takeaway, we learned a lot that you also gained experience with the students. But what would you recommend people who work in corporates or different companies, smaller, medium, large, whatever? What would you recommend them to really unleash their creativity?
Having an environment where you feel like you can be creative, whatever creativity then is, but that each person has the opportunity to tell the other co-workers, hey, I have here an idea. Do you want to listen to me? Or to have that feeling, a kind of in German Wertschätzung, how would you translate that?
Appreciation.
Yeah, appreciation. Yeah. To having that appreciation in the daily work is super, super important. What I learned in Germany, Sweden, United States, in my teams, in my schools, in my departments, I try to motivate them to understand what you're doing is great, but here what you're doing here, maybe here you need to improve better. But in that kind of, like Jürgen Klopp, in that coach metaphor or image, then you give so much power to the people you have in your company that you see after a while, they feel so appreciated. You get fantastic new ideas and a lot of new creativity into your daily work. And that is super interesting when you see it once, how creative people can be if you give them the power to be. And the power is one important power to me, what I learned is appreciation, a culture of belonging, where I can, even if I do not agree, I can respectfully disagree, of course, but because without disagreement, we do not go forward. We do stay where we are. We need that challenge, but that needs to be, of course, coordinated or well done in a specific culture where everybody feels like I can say what I really think and being that constructive together.
I mean, this also brings the people closer together then, right? So it's a win-win situation, not only for one individually, but also for a huge team, let's say, to also have this feeling of being together, or you just like you call it, feeling of being home.
Yeah, absolutely. This, of course, might be not enough, but that is an important start, having that appreciation, the culture of belonging. That might be not enough. People still need other things. Some people need guidance. Some people need structure. Not all are the same like me or you. Some people need more freedom. Other people, again, need more processes. But to figure out what these people need that is probably, and then the idea what you actually shared, to have that kind of creativity, energy barometer, you use it in a different way. That is also where you get you to understand where we are right now, and that could be helpful as well. I'm coming more from the higher education part, but again, I see my different international teams, and I had teams from 20 people in a room, 20 different nations. It always worked when you have that motivation, when you motivate them to foster them and to really tell them what they are really good at. They really need to have that feedback because they don't know, or they try to they do not believe in themselves anymore when they don't listen, then when they don't hear it from the others, from the chefs or the boss. So they need to have that feedback, what they are good at as well.
Yeah. I can only imagine that that's a quite tough journey because it's also very individual sometimes, and it's a lot of effort to motivate people to stay engaged, to appreciate. But in the end, I'm quite sure it pays off, definitely, to also spark the feeling of belonging all together. So I'm actually quite happy with all of that.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it, Isa. Wonderful
Me
to have
too.
you.
Thank you so much.
Any famous last words, Bibi? Master of ceremony.
I love what you said, Isa. This kind of appreciation we need to share a little bit more. I think in general, this is a topic we need to push more. But when it comes to creativity, of course, we always need to keep in mind that this will also help. And we should also bring that to work life more. Also, not only in personal life, this is important, but it's also part of our work life that we can actually grow, not just individually, but also together. So thank you so much for sharing these valuable insights, Isa.
Thank you so much for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.